Okay, so we are going to start a comparison between the two AWS services. The first one is AWS CloudTrail and another one is Amazon CloudWatch. So the very first service which we are going to compare is AWS CloudTrail, and another service which we are going to compare is Amazon CloudWatch. AWS CloudTrail is CloudWatch. So we will be discussing CloudTrail and its important points. So the very first important point here is, so CloudWatch is a monitoring service, as we know that. Similarly to the CloudTrail, as we compare that, CloudTrail is also one of a kind of a monitoring tool, but for your API activities, what are happening in your AWS account. So indeed, the CloudWatch is a monitoring service for your resources or your applications. But a key difference here is that CloudTrail basically logs your API calls which are happening in your AWS account, whereas Amazon CloudWatch helps in monitoring your application or resources. So the very first point for the CloudTrail is it records API calls for your AWS account. And the CloudWatch, what it does is, it basically monitors the AWS resources and its applications. Monitors AWS resources and applications. So the metrics, it includes metrics part, it includes logs part. All these are coming under the Amazon CloudWatch. So the very first thing, both are monitoring service. So as we know that the CloudWatch or the CloudTrail, both are monitoring service. What CloudTrail monitors is the API calls, and what CloudWatch monitors is the metrics plus logging part. Uh, it is a managed kind of both are managed kind of services. So AWS has designed these services for us to directly log the application logs or the resource metrics what we are using. Similarly, the CloudTrail is used to log the API activities, what activities we do in our AWS account. It is the responsibility of the AWS to log its, for example, if any IAM user is doing some activity in your AWS account, it is the responsibility of the AWS account root user or some user to track those API calls which are happening in your AWS account. So this is the service. Directly we can use it or see those things in the CloudTrail. What API calls has been happening for your AWS account. So coming to the point number two. So coming to the point number two. By default, what CloudWatch offers or the CloudTrail offers, that we are going to see how what they are enabled or not by default, or we need to enable them, that we can discuss this thing. So AWS, when any account is created, by default CloudTrail is enabled. So you can expect CloudTrail is enabled by default. So when any AWS account is created, AWS account is created. When any AWS account is created, CloudTrail is enabled by default. So coming to the CloudWatch part, so CloudWatch part is basically dependent on the resources or applications. So if the application or any resources is running, then we can see the metrics. For example, any EC2 instance or any EBS volumes or any RDS instances or any instances related with Lambda functions, invocation is happening or not, proper logging is happening or not for the Lambda functions. All these things are properly logged, and it is managed by AWS CloudWatch Logs. And similarly, there is a metrics also which AWS provides, like for CPU utilization, memory utilization, or the volume consumption. All these things are managed by the CloudWatch service. So now the CloudWatch service is indeed enabled, and anyone can use it. And it's dependent on resources plus applications what we are trying to run on AWS account. So it is not like it is always showing the metrics of any AWS resources. It is only show the metrics when any resource or the is in created state or in is in running state or in any logging state. For example, any application is having the logs injected to the CloudWatch log groups. Those are visible in the AWS CloudWatch logs. Coming to the third point, so, what other things CloudTrail offers? So, very first thing the CloudTrail offers, what we can see that what are the things what the CloudTrail can offer. Here is, for example, if you are using the IAM user, so we would need to know as a root user who is making that request. So using the CloudTrail, we can track that request, who has made the request. So info for user who has made request and what request. that can be used by our root user for compliance and security purposes too. Actions are also tracked. So if any IAM user is particularly creating another IAM user or creating any EC2 instances or invoking any Lambda functions, all these are getting tracked too. So these are the actions what a user can perform. So parameters for those actions are also there, and response elements. What are the elements? Has provided some response to the AWS that is also tracked in the CloudTrails. Parameters for actions and response. Parameters for actions and response are also logged. So now we have seen these things that CloudTrail is basically used for the logging of the API calls. So in the AWS, every action is treated as a API call which is happening. So we can say that any action which is happening on the AWS account, CloudTrail is the service logging it properly for the compliance and the auditing purposes. So similarly, the CloudWatch logs, what are its important role? It is used to collect and track metrics, and you can see and analyze your logs. You can set alarms. You can create dashboards, metrics, or alarm. You can create the dashboard of the metrics or the logs. It is not a particular thing which AWS CloudWatch can handle. It is a logging tool, or it can act as the metrics monitoring tool also. So where so the question is where the CloudTrail logs are stored, or this particularly information is either in the S3 bucket or in the CloudWatch log groups. So it is just some storage is required definitely. So storage is provided by S3 or the CloudWatch log groups to store the logs, or you can use the S3 bucket to store the logs of the CloudTrail directly. We can have the setting enabled to use the S3 bucket or the CloudWatch log group. It is not only the S3 bucket who is responsible, so we can use the CloudWatch log group too. Moving forward, We also need to know when those events are the CloudTrail events are sending to the S3 bucket or any log groups. For example, what I mean to say here is generally how much time a CloudTrail logs the API calls. For example, it will take 15 minutes to log by CloudTrail. At t equal to 0, S3 bucket is created. So let's take an example. Let's take an example. Let's take an example as S3 bucket is created at t equal to 0. So t equal to 15 minutes. It will the CloudTrail will log. So at t equal to 15 minutes, the CloudTrail will log our events. So typically, CloudTrail delivers the events in 15 minutes of the API call when it has happened. So you have created, any user action is getting performed. So if you need to see the CloudTrail logs, usually look it after the post 15 minutes, either in the S3 bucket or in the CloudWatch log groups to see the CloudTrail logs. Coming to the CloudWatch part, how much time it is taken. So it is divided into various categories. So the category one is basic monitoring. So basic monitoring category is one of the category which is sending the metrics to the CloudWatch metrics or the CloudWatch logs too. It generally takes 5 minutes. Another one is detailed monitoring. So detailed monitoring comes with the 1 minute time period. So these are time period. So these are the few discussion points which are responsible to analyze or to compare the CloudTrail service versus the CloudWatch services. We will be doing a quick summary. So what we have seen. So we are going to do the quick summary what we have seen. So the very first point what we have discussed here is that the CloudWatch is a monitoring kind of a service. Similarly, the CloudTrail is also the monitoring kind of a service. So the CloudWatch monitors the resources and application metrics or its logs, whereas the CloudTrail monitors the API calls which are happening on your AWS account. So the CloudWatch or the CloudTrail, whether we use it, it is enabled by default in our AWS account. So generally, the CloudWatch is a resource dependent or application dependent stuff unless and until particular resources is created. Then only we can see those logs or those resource metrics, whether it is the EC2 CPU utilization or memory utilization or any network utilization. CloudTrail, however, logs those API calls of creation of S3 buckets, creation of EC2 instances in its respective S3 bucket or CloudWatch logs groups. So the CloudWatch, what it helps in So CloudWatch is basically, as we know, that is used to track the metrics and all those stuff. Similarly, the CloudTrail is used to track the API calls. So why CloudTrail is used? So the question here is, the final thing which we are going to summarize here is why. So the question of why for the CloudTrail is, it is used for compliance plus regulatory standards. It is used for the compliance and regulatory standards. Whereas logging part is for the logs plus metrics during troubleshooting is one of the thing. There is a log insights kind of a thing. The CloudWatch that is also responsible. That is also helpful. It is one of the key features of the CloudWatch, that it provides the queries. You can easily do the queries on your logs. For example, if you have the last 2 months log, you can easily query those logs. Earlier, what we used to do, we used to go through line by line or do some regex in the command line of the Linux system where the logs are getting stored. Either in the EBS volumes, the logs, application logs are getting stored. Now, in the modern cloud world, what we can uh, use the CloudWatch as a managed kind of a services like the CloudWatch logs, directly the application. So this is the application. It can directly send the logs to the log groups. So what it means that directly applications can send the logs to log groups, and using log insights we can query the logs. So log group is something like a group of the logs in which individual stream of logs are bombarded to the log groups, and multiple streams are there. For example, if a stream is happening at even at a time at a particular time, so all those log groups which are associated with these streams are put it under a single stream. So now this is one of the key feature of the log group, that we can analyze the logs using the log insights query. So next when we're going to discuss how these CloudTrail is sending the events to the log groups, how sending the data is happening. So there is a separate real-time communication system. So in AWS, AWS is designed in a completely different way, where individual services can be bundled to complete a particular task. It is not like a single task which the AWS is doing. It will be helpful if you combine API gateway or the Lambda functions to develop a full stack app maybe. So there are various examples in which AWS can be helpful in deploying the application. So particularly why I admire AWS here is that it is easy to learn first of all, and it will not take much time to grasp those services and how you can easily integrate those services in your projects. Okay, so this marks the end of the discussion between the AWS CloudTrail versus the Amazon CloudWatch logs, or the metrics, what we call. So next thing what we are going to discuss would be a comparison of the various storage types, or a comparison between the data services. For example, if you have the on-premise system and you need to sync the data from the on-premise to AWS cloud, how you can do that? Or you need to have a if you need to have a hybrid kind of a system in which you want to utilize both the on-premises environment resources as well as the AWS resources for the storage purposes, for logging purposes, or for any purposes. What are the services that would be helpful in us that we are going to see in the coming comparisons of AWS services?